It was 2 days before the Passover and the festival of the unleavened bread. The chief priests and the scribes were looking for a way to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. While Jesus was at Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at the table, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very costly ointment of nard, and she broke open the jar and poured the ointment on his head. But some were there who were angry. And they scolded the woman.
Let her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has performed a good service for me. For you always have the poor with you, and you can show kindness to them whenever you wish, but you will not always have me. She has done what she could. She has anointed my body beforehand for its burial. Truly, I tell you, whenever or wherever the good news is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in remembrance of her.
Then Judas Iscariot, who was one of the 12, went to the chief priests in order to betray Jesus to them. When they heard it, they were greatly pleased and promised to give Judas money. So he began to look for an opportunity to betray Jesus. On the first day of unleavened bread, when the Passover lamb is sacrificed, Jesus was with his disciples. Where do you want us to go and make the preparations to eat the Passover? Jesus sent 2 of his disciples with these instructions.
Go into the city, and a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him, and wherever he enters, say to the owner of the house, the teacher asks, where is my guest room where I may eat the Passover with my disciples? The owner will show you a large room upstairs, furnished and ready. Make preparations for us there.
So the disciples set out and went to the city and found everything as Jesus had told them, and they prepared the Passover meal. When it was evening, Jesus came with the 12. And when they had taken their places and were eating, Jesus spoke to them.
Truly, I tell you, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me.
They began to be distressed and to say to him one after another, surely not.
It is one of the 12, one who is dipping bread into the bowl with me. For the promised one goes as it is written of him, but woe to that one by whom the promised one is betrayed. It would have been better for that one to not have been born.
When the disciples had sung the hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives.
You will all fall away, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee.
Even though all fall away, I will not.
Truly, I tell you, this day, this very night, before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times.
Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you.
And all of the disciples said the same. Jesus and the disciples went to a place called Gethsemane.
Sit here while I pray.
He took with him Peter and James and John. Jesus began to be distressed and agitated.
My soul is deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and keep awake.
And going a little farther, Jesus threw himself on the ground and prayed that, If it were possible, the hour might pass from him.
Abba, Abba God, for you all things are possible. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I want, but what you want.
Jesus came and found them sleeping and turned to Peter.
Simon, are you asleep? Could you not keep awake 1 hour? Keep awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak.
And again Jesus went away and prayed, saying the same words. And once more he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy, and they did not know what to say to him. He came back a third time.
Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Enough! The hour has come. The promised one is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up. Let us be going. Look, my betrayer is at hand.
Immediately, while Jesus was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived, and with him there was a crowd with swords and clubs, from the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying,
"The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard."
So when Judas came, he went up to Jesus at once.
"Rabbi."
And Judas kissed Jesus. Then those from the crowd laid hands on Jesus and arrested him. But one of those who stood near drew his sword and struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear.
Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as though I were a rebel? Day after day, I was with you in the temple teaching, and you did not arrest me. But let the scriptures be fulfilled.
All of them deserted him and fled. A certain young man was following him, wearing nothing but a linen cloth. They caught hold of him, but he left the linen cloth and ran off naked. They took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests, the elders, and the scribes were assembled. Peter had followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest, and he was sitting with the guards, warming himself at the fire. Now the chief priests and the whole council were looking for testimony against Jesus to put him to death, but they found none. For many gave false testimony against Jesus, and their testimony did not agree. Some stood up and gave false testimony against him. "We heard him say, 'I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another, not made with hands.'" But even on this point, their testimony did not agree. Then the high priest stood up before them and turned to Jesus.
"Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you?"
But Jesus was silent and did not answer.
"Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?"
I am, and you will see the promised one seated at the right hand of the power, and coming with the clouds of heaven.
Then the high priest tore Jesus' clothes.
"Why do we still need witnesses? You have heard his blasphemy. What's your decision?"
All of them condemned him as deserving of death. Some began to spit on him, to blindfold him, and to strike him. The guards also took him and beat him. While Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the female servants of the high priest came by. When she saw Peter warming himself, she stared at him.
"You also were with Jesus, the man from Nazareth."
But Peter denied it.
I do not know or understand what you are talking about.
Peter went out into the forecourt. Then the cock crowed, and the female servant, on seeing him, began again to say to the bystanders.
"This man is one of them."
But again Peter denied it. Then after a little while, the bystanders again turned to Peter. But Peter began to curse and swore an oath.
I do not know this man you are talking about.
At that moment, the cock crowed for the second time. Then Peter remembered what Jesus had said to him.
Before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times.
And he broke down and wept. As soon as it was morning, the chief priests held a consultation with the elders and the scribes and the whole council. They bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate.
Are you the king of the Jews?
You say so.
Then the chief priests accused Jesus of many things.
Have you no answers? See how many charges they bring against you.
But Jesus made no further reply, so that Pilate was amazed. Now at the festival, Pilate used to release a prisoner for them, anyone for whom they asked. Now a man called Barabbas was in prison with the insurrectionists who had committed murder during the insurrection. So the crowd came and began to ask Pilate to do for them according to his custom.
Do you want me for you to release the king of the Jews?
Pilate realized that it was out of jealousy that the chief priests had handed him over. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have Pilate release Barabbas for them instead.
Then what do you wish me to do with the man you call the king of the Jews? Crucify him. Why? What evil has he done?
But they shouted all the more. Crucify him. So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified. Then the soldiers led Jesus into the courtyard of the palace, that is, the governor's headquarters, and they called together the whole cohort, and they clothed him in a purple cloak, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on him, and they began saluting him. They struck Jesus' head with a reed, spat upon him, and knelt down in homage to him. After mocking him, they stripped him of the purple cloak and put his clothes on him. Then they led him out to crucify him. They compelled a passerby who was coming in from the country to carry his cross. It was Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus. Then they brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means a place of a skull. And they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. And they crucified him and divided his clothes among them, casting lots to decide what each should take. It was 9:00 in the morning when they crucified him. The inscription of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." And with him they crucified 2 rebels, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided Jesus, shaking their heads. In the same way, the chief priests, along with the scribes, were also mocking him among themselves. He saved others, he cannot save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now, so that we may see and believe. Those who were crucified with him also taunted him. When it was noon, darkness came upon the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. At 3:00, Jesus cried out,
Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani.
which means,
My God, why have you forsaken me?
and someone ran, filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink.
Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to take him down.
Then Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last. And the curtain of the temple was torn in two, from top to bottom. The centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way Jesus breathed his last.
Truly, this man was God's son.
There were also women looking on from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James the Younger and of Joses and Salome. They followed Jesus when he was in Galilee and ministered to him. And there were many other women who had come up with them to Jerusalem. When evening had come, and since it was the day of preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council, who was also himself waiting expectantly for the dominion of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate wondered if Jesus were really dead, and summoning the centurion, he asked him whether he had been dead for some time. When Pilate learned from the centurion that Jesus was dead, he granted the body to Joseph. Then Joseph bought a linen cloth, and taking down the body, wrapped it in the linen cloth, and laid it in a tomb that had been hewn out of rock. Joseph then rolled a stone against the door of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joses, saw where the body was laid.